It's Thursday, January 10th, 2019, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On Barnstable Today, we learn more about the host agreement with Vineyard Wind and explore the Will It Check Out cart at Sturgis Library. First up, municipal news and notes. A busy intersection in Hyannis will have detours and lane closures starting today. Sewer work at the intersection of Addicts Lane and Finney's Lane, associated with the future Cape Cod 5 headquarters, begins Thursday, January 10th and continues through Friday, January 18th as weather allows. Day work starts at 9 a.m. and some night work is scheduled for 7 p.m. And police details will be directing traffic. Seek alternate routes if possible to avoid construction work. The schedule of construction is on the town website, www.townofbarnstable.us. Massachusetts offshore wind developer Vineyard Wind has entered into a host community agreement with the town of Barnstable. The agreement, which has been filed with the Massachusetts Energy Facilities Siting Board, represents another milestone for the United States' first large-scale offshore wind farm as it advances through the permitting process to the onset of construction in 2019 and operations by 2021. Assistant Town Attorney Charles McLaughlin joins us in studio for a deep dive into what is in the agreement and the benefits to the town of Barnstable. With me today, Assistant Town Attorney Charles McLaughlin. We're going to talk Vineyard Wind and host agreement. What is a host agreement? Charlie's going to tell us.
Host agreement is a contract between an entity and the town to define, in this case, obviously on Vineyard Wind's behalf, what our relationship is with respect to the cable coming ashore and to the substation, who's doing what, when they're doing it, how we're checking to make sure that the environment is protected, and covering a whole series of other considerations that try and spell things out in reasonable but not complete detail, and leaving some of the details to be worked out among the professionals from the engineering side. But it's our best attempt to define who's doing what over the next 25 years.
All right. 25 years, this is a long project. It's not like it's going to, start next week and end a year from now.
Correct.
There's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts in this. Vineyard Wind has been granted a lot of their special permitting from the federal government, so a lot of their, pieces of the puzzle are in place. Why is it important for the town to actually enter some of these pieces in the front end of this host agreement? For example, where's the cable going to come ashore? What happens when the cable comes ashore? Give us a little breakdown on how you approach these negotiations and what
Sure.
the town really needed.
Sure. I brought a copy of it with me. It's 23 or 4 pages. As you indicated, an awful lot of moving parts on it, but really the starting point on this, in some respects, is where it's going to connect to the grid. And they had a number of options that were required. This is under the purview of the State Department of Public Utilities and its subsidiary board, the Energy Facility Siting Board, which governs all of these types of projects throughout the state. And it's important to have a place to connect this, obviously, to the regional grid so the electricity can go in and service the entire needs throughout the system. It's not dedicated just to the Cape, but it goes into the grid as an extra tranche of energy to supplement what we're already doing in other methods. So critical to that process is where it comes ashore from the town's perspective. And the DPU required that there be alternatives proposed and analyzed thoroughly in order to determine where it could be done with the most advantage and the least cost and the least harm to the environment. And that process is something we're familiar with, having gone through the Cape Wind case. And we had a lot of concerns there. We had and have a lot of concerns here. And from lessons learned there, we with I think a very reasonably cooperative approach from Vineyard Wind, given that we're on opposite sides of an important discussion in some respects. But we were able to start a active dialogue with them a couple of years ago, led by the town manager, and going from there and spelling out some critical must-haves from the very beginning to protect the environment. We had learned, for example, and probably first and foremost in our concerns and in the manager's concern, was the issue of water protection. The Cape Wind case, all of these cables, because they carry such high volume of electricity, heat up. And as they heat up, it's necessary in order to prevent faults to cool them down. And Cape Wind chose a method that had a cooling fluid throughout the length of the cable and at the substation. This cooling fluid, if it mixes with groundwater, is highly toxic. And it was critical to us that we avoid that or plan for its containment should there be any release. Vineyard Wind came to us and said, we're using a different methodology of energy distribution. So from day one, the cables are solid cables, they're not liquid cooled. And therefore, the liquid cooling that we're concerned about is to be located at the substation. There were several options for them to consider all the way from Fall River and east to Falmouth, to Mashpee, to West Barnstable, and to Hyannis/Barnstable in Independence Park for their substation. The equipment there has thousands of gallons, the transformers particularly, thousands of gallons of this so-called dielectric cooling fluid. And if that gets away from you and it gets into the water table, it could be catastrophic, quite frankly. So that said, the energy needs of the Commonwealth and the statutes that govern the DPU's review of this give enormous power to the DPU and the Energy Facility Setting Board to, frankly, overrule any local opposition, any county opposition, and even state agencies. So it was really important for us to get to the table early, spell out our concerns, recognize the reality of that statutory construct, and also the reality of doing what we could early on to try and find a way to make this happen that benefits everybody.
It's fascinating that, there's in that short period of time that technology and methodology changes. This is a new industry, a blue economy industry. It's going to bring jobs to the region, I'm sure, as well as some other enhancements to the town. So we didn't enter this agreement for free.
No.
So there's a monetary consideration for this. The town needs revenue every year, needs at least $1 million in revenue every year to maintain services and the levels of operations here at the town. So when we talk about Vineyard Wind and a host agreement, are there monetary considerations for the town here as well?
There certainly are. Although the monetary component was not driving this, program, but because of the risk posed and because of the insults that the Hyannis water system had already suffered from the airport and from the fire training academy, and some historical insults because of the industrial nature of the park, which is directly upstream from the underground water flow, going directly towards our Mary Dunn wells and others for that matter. We thought it was really important, if we could, to find some way for taking on that risk and not opposing this project to be compensated in a fashion that would allow the mitigation monies, if you will, perhaps to be devoted in the council's discretion to a fund that would help us address our current and future water needs. And we achieved that in two ways. One was through specifically earmarked and segregated mitigation funds at the rate of, if the project went, the first component of the project went to a new substation to be built in Independence Park, and all of the approvals fell in place such that the thing was going to be constructed, we'd receive $16 million over the life of the contract. If Vineyard Wind chooses either from an expansion of the current state procurement for green energy that they won the first round on to win a second round, which is coming out this summer sometime, they would want to bring their project in to Town of Barnstable again, but because the capacity at Independence Park would then be full, they wanted to bring it up to the Oak Street substation. And if that were to occur, we'd get another $16 million in over the 25-year life of that aspect of the project. Vineyard Wind has also bid on a second federal lease offshore beyond what they already successfully bid on, and that presents another opportunity to bring energy ashore where we're not sure, but all of these, if they come into Town of Barnstable, it's appropriate that we, for the cost of balancing that risk and reward for the region, and there certainly are rewards for it, to consider an appropriate payment. Beyond those two payments, like any other private project, this will produce personal property taxes and/or, depending on the nature of the structures, perhaps real estate property tax income to the town. And for the phase one aspect of the project, up to Independence Park, which was Vineyard Wind's favored place to come ashore, whether it was through the Town of Barnstable or through the Town of Yarmouth, the estimated income to be derived from, taxable income to be derived from that first phase of the project is about $1 million a year, at least initially. It will be what it will be, depending on the assessor's view of its value as time goes along, but it will extend for the full time that that project is there as an asset. So at a minimum, 25 years presumably, and these facilities, the transformer facilities and so forth, with what we've seen in the Eversource array, last a good 40 plus years. So it's a long stream of income. That again will be duplicated over in Oak Street if they go to Oak Street as well. So $1 to $2 million a year perhaps in the first couple of years of each phase, and from there on it'll just depend on what the town is taxing and what the assessed value of the property is.
Right, and then there's also some intangibles here that we'll be realizing is once that cable goes into the ground to get to these substations, those roads have to be repaved.
That's correct. Yep.
So those obviously are always on a town's mind, is those upgrades of
Yep.
roads. So those would be included in that as well.
They'll be done simultaneously. The town's work to take from a sound engineering perspective to advance the timeline for work that we know needs to be done, and to take advantage of the fact that the roadways will be opened up in order to put in the subterranean cable for Vineyard Wind. It's a good opportunity for us to upgrade infrastructure there, and we'll be doing that. And just this past week, the council started to look at that issue. Actually, they started to look at a couple of issues related here. One is the cost of some preliminary engineering to see what opportunities there are to move in parallel while that road is torn apart. The second thing the council looked at last week is to create a dedicated fund from the mitigation payments that we talked about, dedicating that monies into an expressly earmarked fund for the purpose of looking at water infrastructure and how best to improve water quality. Hopefully in that process, either lessening the use of or getting away wholly from the use of Mary Dunn wells and relocating wells upstream of as many of the sources of contaminants as we're aware of, so that for the indefinite future we'll have good pure water coming in. And which is absolutely vital to this village and to all of the infrastructure it supports, including the hospital and other key consumers. So it's a good opportunity for us to take these wells out of harm's way, and who knows what the next emerging contaminant might be, and what challenges it presents or might present. So important to get this, take advantage of this opportunity, all of which was thinking that was foremost in our minds when we first started looking at this project. So a good opportunity to move wells, find some funding sources to do so, and get clean energy into the grid in the process. So.
A win, a win, a win.
Yes, yeah, excuse
so
me.
there will be a little bit of disruption, perhaps, down at the Colville Beach area. What do you want to tell residents as we wrap up this interview? What can they expect as we move forward?
The cables will be coming in from offshore, and the way this, again, in significant detail, working with our engineering department, Vineyard Wind will work in the off-season at Colville's. They expect it to last, the work there to last perhaps 2 winter seasons. And in each instance, the actual cable path will be relatively narrow, will come in underground from offshore and pass beneath the beach portion at Colville's as much as 25 to 30 feet deep, and then quickly ascend to the parking lot area where it will level out at about a 4 to 6 foot depth, fully enclosed cabling and so forth, and work its way around the north side of the parking lot and out onto Craigville Beach Road, and then up Craigville to whichever route finally works out. It looks as though it's going to go up to Strawberry Hill, Finney's Lane, and up that way. And they're still working out, depending on DPU approval of this final route, going up that route and coming into Independence Park off Finney's in some fashion. There are 2 or 3 variants up there, and the engineers are working through that with the DPU. So at the end of the day, to answer your question, once the cable work is done for the season, the parking lot and beach will be buttoned up. They're using what they call, I should mention, they're using what they call horizontal direct drilling, which means they'll set up a large drilling rig in the parking lot, and it'll drill down from a pit and then horizontally out for the better part of 1,000 feet out to into the area under Nantucket Sound, and then surface out there to connect to the cable in a junction box coming in from offshore. So per se, the beach itself won't be disturbed, and that will be the case. It's an enclosed cable, fully shielded and so forth, and come in that fashion. So you won't actually see an interruption with the surface use of the beach. The parking lot will be torn up for the winter, will be temporarily restored for next year from now, 2020 presumably. And again, that fall, the remainder of the work will be accomplished. At the end of that work, Vineyard Wind will give us a new parking lot and contribute up to $80,000 for the cost of a brand new bathhouse over there. So, at the end, there will be tangible benefits there. We got a brand new parking lot. The one over there is falling apart, quite frankly. So, a lot of work to be done there. Some temporary inconvenience while that section is fenced off during actual construction work, and then buttoned up for the summer and re-engage afterwards.
Wow, just so many moving parts with this, but I thank you so much, Charlie, for coming in and kind of giving us a little bit of a deep dive on this. I know that, even myself trying to wrap my head around exactly what this project is. The website for Vineyard Wind is extremely informative.
Yeah.
They have video there. They have all sorts of different things that residents can sink their teeth into. And if they choose to, they can read the how many pages?
22 or 3 pages.
23 page
yeah.
host agreement.
Yeah.
But definitely we'll probably talk again as
Yep.
the project starts to break down. But thanks again for kind of getting us in this process of
Happy to help.
it's happening.
Yeah, we're happy to help, happy to play a small part in it. We are available if people have questions. Probably I'm the fellow to make the initial call to on many of these issues, and I can send them in the right direction and explain anything on the host community agreement. So,
Excellent.
Paula, thank you so much. Great to
Thank
see
you.
you. Happy
You
New
too.
Year.
You
Good
too.
to see you. Thank you.
Will it check out? It's more than just books today at your local library. We head over to Sturgis to check out all the cool things you can borrow with your library card. We're at Sturgis Library for our second segment, Will It Check Out? The libraries are much more than books nowadays, and with me, Corey Fahrenkopf. You are like an enormous amount of titles here, so I'll let you, adult services, reference, but also, you know what's to check out, right?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of new stuff coming out right now. That's kind of the trend in libraries in the last couple of years, and you'll see libraries that are starting to rent out like tools and stuff for your household and different cooking implements and like really big, like kind of expensive equipment for people in the community. Here at Sturgis, we're starting kind of small because if we had like 15 lawnmowers to rent, I wouldn't be able to buy any books for people. So we got a list of stuff if you want me to tell you all about it.
Yeah, I would.
Cool. So first of all, we got a ukulele that we're going to be checking out. We had a ukulele program probably like 5 months back, and we probably had like 50 people show up for it. So there's a lot of people in the community that are really into ukulele. If you're wanting to start music and have like train kids how to do stuff, or if you're later on in life and never like picked up an instrument before, ukulele is super good to go to because it's 4 strings. You play it open, it plays a chord, and it's fairly simple to learn as far as like versus like violin, like that's rough.
Right.
So we got ukuleles. What Paul is holding, we've got a little scientist microscope kit. A while ago, we got a grant to kind of like increase our STEAM presence, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So we got a bunch of learning toys for children kind of between the ages of, I think, like 3 and 8. And so stuff like this little microscope will teach kids about like how the tiny world works.
Yeah.
And there's a couple other things that work for different musical arrangements and things to expand like children's problem solving and like inquisitiveness towards like sciences.
Right.
So we got that. We have our telescope that we check out fairly regularly. You get it for a week. It's like a high-end telescope, so it's got up to like magnification of like 52 times, I think.
Wow.
So you can see all the planets that are close by. I mean, you're not going to see like Pluto way out there, but you'll see Mars and Venus. That comes with a bunch of instructions on like how to use a telescope and like where to find certain what are they called?
Constellations.
Constellations, yeah. You can find certain constellations. And before you check it out, I give you like a little 10-minute lesson on how to use the telescope, how to expect with it. And it's supposed to be pretty helpful because if you've never used a telescope before, you get a complicated one. It's a little overwhelming. We also have a bunch of puzzles that we're lending out right now. And when I say puzzles, they're not like your run-of-the-mill puzzles that you would see everywhere. They're these like artisanal, wicked, like, it's hard to say anything besides like they're wicked artsy. They're all woodcut and they're all like small run. So they all have an image of a different piece of art on them. They all have pieces that are shaped in non-traditional ways. There's a bunch that don't have normal edges. And it sounds kind of weird when you're saying it out loud, but when you see it and you see like the crazy wavy edges or the edges that form itself into like a city skyline or a castle village, some of the pieces are shaped like squirrels or turtles or like weird keys. Some, when you finish them, you put it'll come with a key and you put your key into it and turn it and a bunch of gears will move inside the puzzle and like the thing will actually move and like come to life for a moment. Yeah, they're nuts and people really like them. We also have a bunch of knitting kits we're going to start circulating, which are just...
This is fascinating.
Right? People love this idea. And it's knitting needles, patterns, and a singular skein of art. Skein? Yeah. But we're also going to do knitting bags at the library, and that's part of like a community project we're going to have going. It's basically for anyone who knows how to knit, and when they come to the library, if they're like, I got half an hour, I feel like knitting for a bit, we're going to have these available, and it's people can continue the work of whoever was knitting previously, and we're going to try to do probably like blankets for the homeless and like caps and mittens and stuff for people in need, so that'll be really cool. That'll be starting soon. We'll be looking for donations of skeins of yarn. If people are willing to donate, that'd be awesome. And we're always continually trying to add stuff. I'm going to say stuff kind of broadly as far as all this stuff goes. We listen to what our patrons are looking for. We're looking for different community input. So if anyone has any suggestions, we're always open-eared here at the library. And that's kind of all the random things we're circulating now that aren't books.
All right, well, make sure. I think I'm going to check that ukulele out.
Do it.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Corey.
You're very welcome.
Here's a look at things to do, places to go, and people to meet. She was born in 1913, alive for 2 world wars, a vaccine for polio, and saw a man land on the moon on TV. Dorothy Robinson celebrated her 106th birthday with friends at the Barnstable Senior Center and is the oldest Barnstable resident. Happy birthday.
Wanted to give everybody a little sweet treat, but what's making our little treat even sweeter today is that we're celebrating a birthday. Not just any birthday. Wow. Today we're getting to celebrate the birthday of the oldest resident in the town of Barnstable.
Oh, that's nice.
Who many of you know. She's a little bit of a legend around our town. We couldn't be more excited to have her here with us today. Her name is Dorothy. She's over in the corner here looking as beautiful and radiant as always. And we are going to sing happy birthday to Dorothy. Believe it or not, she's in her 11th decade of being here with us. She's going to be 106 in just a few days. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dorothy. Happy birthday to you.
Make a wish.
I just wish everyone has a wonderful day like I'm having.
You want a little help blowing out these candles? I think these 2 young ladies might pitch in. The 3 of you?
They say I have got a lot of wind.
Will you 1, 2.
Go ahead, you two. Not that. Hey!
Oh, you want to do it? Come on. Here we go, Dorothy.
Hooray!
These are for you.
Comments, suggestions, accolades? Connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. Email us or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works for you. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.